and welcome to Co-Ed for Kids Facebook Live. I'd like to thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. Today, we're going to be talking to you about some common concerns for anyone working with children, and that topic is temper tantrums. How do we control them? How can we stop them? Is there any ways to even prevent them? I believe we have a lot of powerful information, and you're going to want to stick around to hear some of these tips. My name is Melissa Shamel, a Special Projects Coordinator for Co-Ed for Kids. My expert guest today is Kristen Betts. I'd like to welcome Kristen back. She had been here a few times before doing some lives with us on some pretty important topics as well. So Kristen, if you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you. And good morning to everybody. My name is Kristen Betts, and I am a consultant here for Co-Ed. So I train on some of the CDA trainings and infant toddler trainings. I used to work for Co-Ed previously as an infant toddler specialist, so dealing with temper tantrums and any behavior issues is kind of in my realm, even though sometimes I feel like, we were talking earlier, I struggle with my own children sometimes. I think that's typical. No matter how much you know in child development, we seem to struggle in some areas. So, but my background is with infant and toddlers, so we'll see what we can get through today.
Thanks, Kristen. I know with her background and experience and knowledge that there'll be some good tips for us to hear today. Children have meltdowns, and it seems like when that temper tantrum starts or the meltdown, you're feeling like you're the only person that this happens to, or maybe it's something that you have caused or that you can control right away with your little magic wand. And I know that sometimes it's not easy. And I had a perfect example. Our family was in Washington, D.C., and we're all walking down the mall area. My son was about 5 at the time, and my daughter was 2.5, and we would stop at some of the vendors, and then we'd move on. And suddenly she decided she was just going to sit, and she crosses her legs and folds her arms and gives me that look like, try to make me move now. And it was a little frustrating and nerve-wracking, and my husband and I were just perplexed. We were dumbfounded. We were coaxing and bribing and short of picking her up and dragging her away, it was soon that my son walked over and he gets down and he's patting her on the back and he's looking at her. He's like, "It's okay, Katie. It'll be fine. We're just going to walk down the ways a little bit." And as quick as she started, she stopped, stood up, grabbed his hand, and they just walked down the mall like nothing had ever happened. She's smiling, and I thought, maybe he had a magic wand or something. Yeah. That was one of those meltdowns that I don't think I'll ever forget. And I don't know if it's because of where it was at or, you're worried people are thinking, well, maybe that isn't your child. You're trying to abduct that child. But I just remember that fear that we felt at the time. Like, it was so out of our control, we just didn't know how we were going to handle it. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of pressures on our parents today, that society puts pressures on how we should be raising our children, our family, our relatives all do that. So today it's our hope that you'll hear some good helpful hints and learn a strategy or two that'll help you understand your child's behavior. I want to make sure we make it clear that sometimes these behaviors, they're developmental. What that means is that's how the child acts at age 1 or age 2 or age 3. So if we can see life through their eyes, whether they're 1 or 2 or 3, I think we better understand the reasoning and the whys and hows of the meltdowns or temper tantrums if we know what they're going through developmentally and have an understanding of that. So what kind of tips are you going to share with us today?
Well, and I think your story is actually a really good example. And when you think of something like that happened and your other child was 5, right?
Yeah.
And coming down to a 2-year-old's level, and it's that comfort, it's that pat on the back, it's that empathy. And I don't think a lot of us think about children having empathy at such a young age, because a lot of adults honestly still struggle with having empathy for one another. And I think as we age, the empathy that we do have for others isn't as well as what a kid would have, because they feel the pain that they're feeling and they understand that they're scared or they don't want to do something, so they go over to comfort them and they feel the comfort. Where a lot of times for us as adults, when there's a tantrum going on, we tense up, we start to panic, and we're like, we're in public, people are staring at us, what are we going to do? They feel that. They feel that tension that we're feeling, and so no matter, I feel like, what you say or what you do, they're not having it because we're tense and we're struggling ourselves. where your son wasn't. He was just like, hey, it's okay, let's go. He was calm about it. But I think as a parent, as a guardian, whoever's taking care of children, that's something that's very difficult, is to be able to stay calm, to not tense up. And in all honesty, I have that issue. My oldest son, he had temper tantrums, but nothing compared to my youngest, who is 6. And his come from a lot of anxiety issues, and when we're in with bigger crowds, and sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, it doesn't work. And he just gets like angrier and angrier with us when we're trying to tell him, like, nope, it's time to go. You know, we're leaving. Like, so if we went to do, say we went to do something fun, so we went to Sky Zone to jump or something. When the time's over, a lot of times that's when you'll see meltdowns. It's because they're not done. They still want to play, and they don't understand that you were only there for an hour. For them, it felt like 5 minutes, and they were having a great time. And so for us, maybe to give those little warnings of, you know, we only have 10 minutes left, guys, so when they tell you, we're going to have to go. So giving those nice warning signs of what's going to happen next. I have this book. It's just Behavior. It's a beginning workshop book. It's from Exchange. This is what it looks like. I think co-ed does have it in the library. I'm not overly positive, but I'm pretty sure they do. There's just some really good things in here for parents or teachers, any caregivers, to kind of look through. And one of the big things on here was, it says, be specific and clear when giving directives. It says children need to know precisely what is expected.
Exactly.
That's something I use a lot when we do go places, is what is expected of my child when we get there. So if we're going to a movie theater, I expect you to sit down and be quiet. I don't expect you to run around and be crazy. If I say it's time to go, then it's time to go. Like, we have to get up and we have to leave. Because in their mind, like, nope, I'm going to throw a fit, because I don't want to go. So we have to be pretty precise on what we want from them. Another thing on here that I really liked was, it says avoid repeating requests and directives. Because it says repeating directives can become troublesome because children quickly learn that they are not expected to respond the first time that they are given a direction.
Because they know you're going to repeat it and say it over and over.
Mom asked me to clean up. If I ignore it, she's going to ask me again. And we as parents do it. I am so guilty of it as well, as saying, you know, boys, get your toys cleaned up. 5 minutes later, boys, I asked you to get your toys cleaned up. And then another 5 minutes, I'm asking again, because they know she's going to keep asking. But instead, if I would give that directive once, and that is their only option at that point, then they know, well, we better get it done. We just tend to do those because it's easier than sometimes having that argument with the child or having a tantrum come up, because that's what happens. Because what happens when you ask your children to clean up? They're tired. They don't feel good anymore. Like, they don't want to do it, and those tantrums start. And so there again, you're in that tantrum phase of, oh no, what are we gonna do? And we tense up because we're thinking all you're doing is picking up toys. Like, this isn't hard.
This isn't something you can't
But
do.
in their little brains, it is. And I know you were talking about the differences in ages and how it is developmental at some stages, and it really is. If you think of your birth to about 1 year of age, this is where we don't have a lot of our speech. So we can't really give you our wants, our needs, the things that we're feeling. So at this stage, we're asking them to do things or behave out in public, and a 1-year-old's like, I don't know what you're saying, and I can't even tell you what I'm feeling.
What it
So
means.
they have some issues with being able to control themselves because they don't really understand their emotions yet. As you start between the 2 and 3 years of age, that's the age that's a little more difficult because we've found our voice. We are starting to become independent, and I think that's where our troubles begin, is because they want to do everything on their own. They think that they can handle it, they don't need you anymore, and in reality, they do need us a lot.
I just hate to hear, though, sometimes the terrible twos.
Exactly.
When you're out in public and you're labeling your child as terrible too, they're
Yes.
going to meet that expectation. And
Yeah.
and again, if they understand that's how they are developmentally,
Yes.
that they want to do it all for themselves, not understanding their limitations.
Yes, it's and they don't understand their emotions either. So sometimes they might throw themselves down and be kicking and screaming, and you're like, I don't understand. You were just happy. Like, what happened? And it's having those conversations, even at 2 and 3, of talking to them. And this book does go into it a little bit. And I know in my trainings we talk a lot about how timeouts can be used in an appropriate way. because automatically we just get upset with them and we think we'll take something away, we'll put them in timeout. And when we put them in timeout, we're not talking.
Right.
So my thing is like I'll give my boys like a timeout where they can go sit in their rooms, but then I always go back and talk to them. Like, so what made us so angry, or why are we so upset today? Why are we talking this way, or why are we hitting? Whatever might be going on. And a lot of times, even my oldest, who's 11, will sometimes be like, Mama, I don't know, like, what's wrong? And my 6-year-old especially doesn't know, and he'll try to come out of his room and we'll say, well, do you know what you did wrong? And he'll be like, nope. And then he'll turn around and he'll have to go think some more. But this gives them time to think about their behaviors, their actions, what they're doing, talking through stuff. Because otherwise we send them to timeout and no one talks to anybody. And timeout, they're usually throwing shoes, they're picking at things, they're wiggling in their seats, they're yelling, like, when can I get up?
They're still interacting.
Yes.
And I just read something not long ago where instead of calling it time out, call it time in.
Mm-hmm.
Do that and engage in a conversation
say,
to identify their feelings. Because, children, even adults, when you think about it, more than anything, we want to be heard. We want to feel like we're heard and our feelings, emotions are validated. And we also want to be understood.
Yeah.
We want to be understood.
And I think there's days as adults, and I use it as an example all the time, because there's days that we don't feel good or we're in a bad mood, but we can't pinpoint what is wrong.
Yep.
And it's not until somebody sits down and actually talks to you that all of a sudden you realize all these things that are wrong. And it's the same for these kids. They might be young, but there's a lot that they see, there's a lot that they hear. Maybe even things that are going on, whether it be at preschool, in their toddler classroom, other kids, like if there's a child that's biting other kids. There's things that go on in their lives that are stressors for them too. And so being able to talk to your children and ask them, what's going on, how are you feeling, then they start to become a little bit more into their emotions and understanding that. And that can go into preschool as well.
Yeah.
And so forth. I mean, talk to them as long as you can, as long as they're willing, because it's an important thing. But the timeout that you were saying, and I know I can't find it in the book, but I did read it, and it was talking about going over roles and expectations with the children and what's going to happen when we go into timeout and where it's going to be, and how long you sit there depends on when you're ready to come talk. Like, you can go over, it's almost like taking just a breather. So even if you wanted to call it something different so they don't think they're in timeout, but like your breathing space or your, just your calming area, like go sit in the calming area for a little bit until you can calm down, and then you can come over and we'll talk about what's bothering you today or what's going on.
And I think a lot of our schools have timeout or safe areas now where they refer to it as go calm down until you can get it together or are ready to talk.
Yeah. So I don't think that there's any like magical dust that will make tantrums any better for anybody.
Wait a minute, there's no wand anywhere?
No, and I wish there was, but my best advice is to just try to stay as calm as you can be and relaxed, and showing those little signs of empathy like towards those children. So the comforting, being able to like pat them on the back, give them a hug, and those types of things.
That's for sure.
Just making them feel like they're being understood without seeing that anxiety in our eyes, because our faces show so much, and the children are going to see that and know, oh, they're disappointed in me, or oh, they're getting upset. So trying to give them that peaceful look of like, it's okay, but being stern with them too, like that voice where they know like, okay, they're not messing around, but we got to pick up and go.
Yes. And that's what brings me, I had 2 questions, I thought, and we've kind of covered those a little bit, but that balance, should you be mean and stern with your child, or should you maybe use a little more humor and talk calmly? And we've kind of covered that. You need to have that little bit of balance, because you want them to feel your calmness, because your child didn't get up in the morning and say, oh, I think I'm going to make my mom's life miserable today. That's not their intent.
Feels like it some days, but I mean, it isn't their intent. And I think that when you ask that question, it's, be calm, but have that sternness in your voice where it's stern enough that they know that you mean what you're saying.
Yep.
And I always call it like the mom face too.
Mom voice and
like
face.
If my mom ever looked at me a certain way in public, I knew to like straighten up. Like she meant business. And so sometimes just giving them that look of like, okay, that's enough. Like I've had enough. And then they'll understand that. So you can do it in a calm manner where they're not reading all those vibes that you're getting so upset, like that it's building.
Yes. I just before we sat down this morning, there was an article about a mom that had peeled a banana for her daughter and cut it in half.
Yeah.
And she just went nuts, and the little one just couldn't get it together. She didn't want her banana cut in half, and that's when the mom was like, that had to understand where she was coming from, that she was going to cry until mom understood her. And it was, mom reworded things like, instead of saying it's okay, it's the same thing, it's just a half, but mom reworded it saying you want a whole banana. She used those two words, and it was like a principle. She said that it helps you communicate with your child, lets them know that that they're heard. If you're saying back to them you want, then that validates again how they want to be heard.
When I was going to say, in here it even says avoid using questions that you do not mean to ask. So it says, like, ask a directive request, such as, Jason, please wash your hands, is preferable instead of, Jason, will you wash your hands?
It's all in the wording.
It is all in the wording. Even the walk in the classroom, instead of saying don't run.
Yep.
Because they're going to hear the run first. And so asking them in a different way is going to help, factor those things in. And if they are upset, because I've done that too. I've cut my son's sandwich in half before and gave it to him, and it was total meltdown. And I was like, over a sandwich? Like, what is wrong? He didn't want it cut in half. And I said, well, and that came down to me not asking, me just assuming, like, everyone cuts their sandwiches in half. And so now I know, like, I ask, but that day I did make him eat it. I said, Cam, it is okay. Like, it's a sandwich. It'll go back together. We can put it back together. And he did eventually eat it. But he let me know that he was not happy about it.
He wasn't.
Yeah.
Don't do it again.
Exactly. And so I learned from that too, and so did he, and we talked about that. So
they can communicate, that's for sure. And then I had one other thing about if the child's being mean or aggressive, like if they're hitting or swinging or throwing anything around, what might be some ways that we would, it's already happened, so we're obviously not going to prevent it, but how can we try to help them get through that part?
And that one's a really hard one because it depends on the child, and a lot of it goes towards their temperaments too. And so if they're a feisty child, you're usually going to see a lot of this, like hitting and swinging, biting, throwing things, and I can honestly say it happens in my household a lot with my youngest because he is feisty. He gets very aggressive. He does like to hit and swing things, and it's hard, and I have to say, when we're in public and this happens, I want to crawl into a little hole and be like, he is not mine, because I don't know what to do in public. Because in public, it's really hard because, like you said, then are people judging you for what you're doing to your child? But then if I let my child get out of hand, they're also judging me because my child's out of hand.
Can't you control him?
So it's a struggle. A lot of mine is just, I give him a tight grip, whether it be by hand or if I hug him to, like, talk to him. It's a tight enough grip that he knows, like, he's comforted in a way, but it's tight to the point that he knows, like, knock it off. Like, we can't be doing this. It's not okay. And he might still, after that, like, he's more mouthy after that. He's not hitting me anymore, but his mouth might still be going, which that I can take over the hitting and stuff. And a lot of that, I just think it's coming from something that they don't understand. So whether it be anxiety or whether it be anger, there's something in there that's bugging them. And so they're taking it out on any means that they can do. So if it requires hitting, if it requires biting you, I'm going to do it, like, because I don't know what's going on inside of me. So we do a lot of talking.
And we
have a lot of conversations
I
after.
do believe in that. I really do.
And a lot of times if we're out in public, we go straight to the car. No matter where we're at, we go straight to the car. And we have our conversation in there. Because he's usually still angry. And I know, like, sometimes I can keep my cool and then sometimes I can't because I'm frustrated.
It's frustrating when you don't know what you can be doing or should be doing.
But get him out of that situation into, like, a quiet place where you can have a conversation.
Yep.
But yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
Well, I think this will bring us to the end, and I want to encourage all of you to comment, ask questions, anything you have about today's topic, and we will respond. We'll also have 2 websites that have some good resource and information. COAD is the Child Care Resource Agency for 31 counties in eastern Ohio. This broadcast is brought to you today in partnership with the Ohio Children's Trust Fund and the Eastern Ohio Regional Prevention Council, whose mission is to prevent child abuse and neglect through investing in strong communities, healthy families, and safe children. The Eastern region includes the following 10 counties: Belmont, Carroll, Coshocton, Guernsey, Harrison, Jefferson, Monroe, Muskingum, Noble, and Tuscarawas. Again, I thank you for being here today. We hope that you found a couple ideas, a couple strategies that maybe you can put to use right away. You know, and if nothing else, know that this happens to everybody.
Happens to everybody.
And it's very common, and it's just getting through these things and understanding the developmental areas, as we said. Again, I'll have the websites listed below. Make your comments, make your questions known to us. And remember to visit our YouTube channel. It's COAD for Kids. We have a YouTube channel. All the videos will be on there as well. Join us again. Our next session live is next Tuesday, January 29th at 10 a.m. Kristen will be back with us again. We will talk about, we'll touch on self-control that ties into the temper tantrums and helping your child gain a little more self-control. But we're also going to focus a little on self-esteem. And what that means is, what is your role in helping your child feel good about themselves? And what can you do as parents or caregivers of a child to help them establish their self-esteem, to grow their self-esteem and make them feel good about themselves? So thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you again. I have one comment, and I can't quote who it came from, but it really meant something to me, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to close with that. So whoever did it gets the credit. But it says, your children will become who you are, so be who you want them to be. Y'all have a great one. Thank you.